And welcome back, people. It's me, James Donnelly, and welcome once again to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host. Now, tonight, as I kind of promised earlier in this week's New Comics, bitches, that we were going to discuss comic book resources. The vote is in. The votes are in because this is election season, and we're going to discuss the top 10 creative runs in comic book history. So what I wanted to do was kind of compare and contrast where mine ended up in the top 10, because some of my runs that I talked about in my video when I did the top 10 that was inspired by CBR's voting, some of mine made it in, some of them didn't make the list at all, but I know that certainly one of mine that I know that absolutely did not, well, two of mine that did not make the list were Wolfman and Colin's Tomb of Dracula, nowhere to be seen, and Greg Rucka's Queen and Country. I didn't really expect either of those to be on this 100 book list. The rest of mine scored in there, and some of them scored in the top 10. So I'm going to run down the top 11 of theirs, and kind of then compare and contrast them. And then you can do, if you've done this video, I know that Agent 42Q has. Some of you out there, I know you probably have at least thought about it since maybe the video that I did. If you have, that's great. If you haven't, take some time. Because it'll come to you. Trust me. So we're going to start with their list and their top 11. So the first one that we're going to talk about of theirs was James Robinson's Starman. Now, I do remember reading some of Robinson's Starman stuff and enjoying it. It was stuff that I got from the library, and I thought it was, this is pretty cool. I wasn't a huge fan. I didn't think it was, oh my god, this is so wow, but apparently a lot of people did. So and I can kind of understand why, because kind of taking a golden age character, and not rebooting it certainly, but giving it basically this lineage, as opposed to, well, it's just the same guy but in the modern era. No, it's it's this guy's son. Instead of being Ted Knight, it's Jack Knight. It's so it was, that was fun and it was enjoyable. I thought it was a good read, but like I said, it was nothing that I felt, okay, well, I've got to run out and go buy this stuff. Because there were a couple of trades that they had, and I did, kind of eat them up, but it's been a while. So this is one of those things I do have to revisit. So that was obviously anywhere near my top 10. But again, like I said, I can maybe see where a lot of people were coming from on that. Because, I mean, it's, it's comic books, it's very subjective. It's going to get, and there are some definitely on this list that are more objective, and we'll talk about that later. So now we'll go to the top 10. Now my number 10 pick, if you remember, if you don't, I'm here to remind you, was was Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips' Criminal run. Now that did, if memory served, it did place on the top 100, but I don't think anywhere near the top 10. But Criminal, of course, I mean, it's the crime classic to me. It's the preeminent crime comic book. Their number 10 was Walt Simonson's Thor run. Now, this is a run that I've read some issues of. I'm a huge fan of The Ballad of Beta Ray Bill, that story arc. I do have it in trade. I think it's terrific. There's more of that stuff that I would like to read, you know, Thor being a frog and everything like that. And, but just, you know, I mean, Ballad of Beta Ray Bill was a really, really incredible tale. And, you know, and Simons's art, you know, just incredible stuff. So I can definitely see where people are coming from on that one, because it was really kind of an extra super defining run for that character, because no one really worked with Thor like that before. You know, given it, you know, kind of this, you know, the character himself has always kind of been larger than life, and certainly, you know, Lee and Kirby's early stuff with Thor really made it, you know, built this great big universe of, you know, Asgard and, you know, the Nine Realms and so on and so forth. But it was really kind of, you know, Simonson's take on it that really kind of, you know, gave it like this truly epic scope. And his art obviously didn't hurt either. So that's their, you know, that's CBR's number 10. Now number 9, my number 9, again, this was Wolfman and Colan's Tomb of Dracula. Again, you know, I would say easily the preeminent horror comic of the 70s, at least as far as the major publishers were concerned, because I know that Harris Comics was doing Creepy and stuff like that, and that stuff was really good, because obviously it was feeding off of the EC era, and, you know, books like Eerie and Vampirella and so on and so forth. I remember some, just on a weird kind of tangent, I remember some of those issues of Creepy and or Eerie being very, very adult in nature. And I kind of want to reread some of those, because some of them were really, I remember this one where like this one guy was really pissed off at his kind of two-timing girlfriend, so he put some kind of spell on her to turn her into a cat. But not like a real cat, just basically with the personality of a cat, so that she would be a tamer or something like that. You know, of course, you know, the stupidest animal to choose, and of course she's just, you know, and she's, you know, humping around even more. And that was, like I said, it was really, really adult. But I do remember that from when I was younger, in my, you know, very early teens or tweens, whatever you want to fucking call them. Anyway, their number 9 was my number 1, which is Garth Ennis's Preacher. I can't call it Ennis and Dillon's Preacher, because even though Dillon did, you know, all of the standalone issues, of course there were other people like Peter Snijberg and Steve Pugh that did, you know, like the Saint of Killers, and did the Saint of Killers mini. You know, I can't remember whoever it was that did like the one shots. You know, the story of You Know Who. You know, of course, the story of Arseface, and the Good Old Boys with Jodie and TC, and of course Peter Snijberg did the Star mini. But that was, I think that was in the context of the actual issues of the book. I don't actually own all the issues. I own all the trades, of course, and I own a lot of the individual issues kind of towards the last third of the run. Anyway, so yeah. Personally, my favorite run of personally, my favorite long-running comic of all time, Preacher. So I can absolutely see that being on the top 10 list of anybody. But it's, you know, interesting, a lot of the comments about it, because they released them, you know, kind of piecemeal. You know, it's like one day you would have 11 through 9, and then the next you'd had 8 and 7, and, you know, so on and so forth, you know. A lot of the comments from a lot of the readers on CBR were basically, you know, it's like I remember reading, you know, Preacher as a teenager, as a young man, just being, you know, oh man, this is so kick-ass. You know, it's anti-religion, and it's, you know, there's tits and ass, and there's all this, ultra violence, and it's like, I can see how just that alone would be appealing, but there is a much deeper story there. And go on to say how Jesse Custer is kind of an asshole, and he's really he is, but he's kind of a selective asshole. Because obviously he's kind of an asshole to Tulip on more than one occasion. But for the most part, he's definitely not an asshole. He's very much the hero. It's not a very anti-heroic tale. It's a pretty heroic tale and a very extraordinary journey. Okay, so going on to number 8. Now this is probably where you'll get the biggest groans from me, the biggest divergence from one list to the other. My number 8 was Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. Again, obviously, kickstarted pretty much every horror comic that we're reading now. And, really introduced Alan Moore to the world as being really, one of its greatest, if not the greatest, comic book writer who's ever lived. Of course, that's a lot of debate to that, but, for my money, it's Moore. Number 8 on CBR's list is Grant Morrison's Batman run. Now, this is literally the... it is the head-scratcher. I don't understand why so many people are in love with this run. It really doesn't make sense. Okay, I mean, okay, now this run kind of, started when either just around or not too long before Batman Begins. Well, no, it started before Batman Begins came out. And so that you had, and then, of course, at the height of everything, you had his, that was the Batman and Son arc. And then, of course, at the height of everything, you had, with Dark Knight coming out 3 years later, you had R.I.P. Kind of winding down and Final Crisis along with it. I enjoy the first arc because it brought kind of a different sensibility, a little bit of fun, a little bit of a sense of humor, and some of the kind of trademark Morrison quality that he's brought to Batman over the years in his JLA stuff. But then, of course, it just descends into utter fucking madness, and it's just a mess. I mean, of course, the League of Batman storyline that introduced the Black Glove, the art by J.H. Williams, of course, is amazing. I mean, it couldn't have been more beautiful. But the story was just like, what the fuck am I reading? I mean, really, I don't understand any of this. It's like, I understand, okay, well, he's doing kind of what Morrison likes to do. He likes to go back in time and resurrect this thing from the kind of Silver Age era and make it modern and make it gritty and make it all fucked up and hallucinatory, which is exactly what he did with R.I.P. I mean, in the most glaringly obvious ways. I mean, basically taking, the Robin Dies at Dawn 2-part issue and basically making that the whole basis for, Dr. Hurt and, everything going on there, and Zur-En-Arrh. I mean, just saying Zur-En-Arrh hurts. It hurts to say. Not phonetically, but just the fact that I had to actually look at this stupid purple Batman costume, that's his like trigger, that's like he will descend back into the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. And it's just it just was such nonsense at that point in time that I just didn't give a shit. I mean, despite how beautiful the Alex Ross covers were, that was a really tough turd to polish for me. And of course, his Batman Incorporated stuff, his Batman and Robin, just all of it was just, to me, it was just a mess of, him doing his weird shit. And I don't appreciate it. I don't like it. I never really did. And, the worst part of it to me was that it just felt like there was no real character existence here. It was just like, I'm going to see how much weird shit I can pack into one issue. And, which is why, I tried Batman Incorporated #1 when it came out, and I'm like, oh god, this is just crap. Because it's continuing along the same lines, him doing the same shit. And so that is where, you will get, it got to be on their message board, got to be very divisive. There were a couple of people that were like, oh, Grant Morrison's the greatest thing that ever happened to Batman, and Snyder's Batman is just, it's just a cheap ripoff of what Morrison was doing, and, Morrison had never been, he's never been better, and Batman's never been cooler, and I'm like, I didn't get involved in that discussion because I'm just like, fuck it. Because there was somebody else that was kind of my proxy voice there who was like, you guys are just morons. No idea what you're talking about. Okay, so moving along. Number 7. Now, my number 7 was Lee and Kirby's The Avengers. Certainly not an epic run, but epic in its scope in creating the super team for the Marvel Universe, and just really showing that yes, a team book, mixing up all the characters and putting them together, but not in a way like what Justice League of America at the time was doing. But in a completely different way, where these are people that are, some of them are scorned by the general public, like the Hulk. Some of, they're considered to be kind of freakish. And then, you get the second roster, and it's, it's one kind of ex-criminal and 2 mutants, that were both members of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. It's, and Captain America leading them. That's some pretty extreme shit. And of course, they never get along. And that was, the thing about the Avengers that was so cool about it, that was different from what, Julie Schwartz was doing over with Justice League at DC, was that they were always kind of getting along. It's like they were always, teaming up and taking down the bad guys. It's like, well, yeah, when the chips come down, the Avengers will always step up, but there's a lot of infighting going on. So it became a team at odds with each other, as opposed to just always kind of, let's fight the bad guys and let's stop them. The kind of vibe that was going on over at DC. Anyway, so the number 7 over at CBR's voting was Frank Miller and Klaus Janssen's Daredevil run. Now, admittedly, I have not read a lot of this. I've read, kind of like the part of the preeminent Elektra storyline, that kind of leads up to her death, and some of the stuff that came after that. And it's amazing stuff. It really is great. But I didn't read enough of it, or didn't maybe perhaps absorb enough of it to really see, because one of the big things about that was Miller's, not just the fact that he, took this kind of C-list character, who had always kind of been marginalized, despite the fact that, there's some really good people working on him, especially art-wise. He had Gene Colan doing him for a long time. But he brought this, he made him like the gritty hero of New York City, as opposed to just being, kind of the Scarlet Swashbuckler that he was before. And, really giving him, making him kind of more of a ninja, more of kind of like a you know, a silent kung fu type of fighter rather than, you know, very, very you know, I mean, he's always been acrobatic, but I mean, making even more so, it lending that fluidity to his fighting styles, as opposed to just kind of like dodging things. Um, and you know, there's some beautiful pages of work in that stuff, and of course, of course, the creation of Elektra, you know, the Elektra versus Bullseye, one wins, one dies. I mean, just that cover. I mean, that's really incredible stuff. And so I totally get it. I mean, it's one of those the things like absolutely. I absolutely understand why people would vote this way. I personally wouldn't. But again, I haven't read enough of it because those fucking omnibuses are huge and they're expensive. So I'll have to figure out some other way. And they're not at the libraries generally. And I don't even have a library card anymore, so I have to go get one again, or at least convince my wife to. Now that she's legal to carry, she has to get a state ID first, but we'll work it out. So yeah, I get Miller and Jansen's Daredevil. And Jansen, you know, I mean, really, you know, doing some pretty remarkable inking on that title. So yeah, I mean, that's like I said, perfectly understandable. So number 6 for me was Ruckus, Queen and Country. Again, you know, like it's the spy novel. You know, it's the spy novel brought. You know, it's the, you know, kind of the current. You know, the modern spy brought to the comics page, and in a way that isn't like, it's not the cool spies where they get to do all the cool shit. It's like, it's the really awful shit that they have to do. And the, you know, the bureaucracy that they have to deal with, and just the reality of being a spy. So I mean, that to me, just, you know, and just creating such an incredible character in Tara Chase, you know, thumbs up all the way. Number 6 over on CBR side, and this is one of the kind of more objective ones, and that is Leon Ditko's Spider-Man. And of course, you know, totally get it. You know, because I mean that it, you know, obviously the character itself, the creation of the character, the creation of it using a teenager as your main character and not as a sidekick, which teenagers were usually relegated to, was, you know, a revolutionary step forward. You know, Marvel really had kind of the forward thinking going on at that point in time, because they were a young upstart company at that point, you know, in that point in their history. So I mean, you know, and just, you know, I mean, the work that Ditko did, you know, is just, you know, incredibly dynamic. You know, the characters, you know, the Rogues Gallery. I mean, because almost all of the great characters of Spidey's Rogues Gallery was created during that run. So I mean, you know, absolutely, totally understand. It's historic. It's, you know, it's great. It's a great, you know, it's always a fun read. You know, like I said, it's not the most literate read in the world because it is, you know, Stan Lee. But, you know, it is always compelling. So, like I said, I get it. That's cool. Number 5 on my list was O'Neill and Adams' Batman run. Again, to me, it really, you know, it brought Batman out of the camp of the 60s and created basically the Batman that we know now. You know, it paved the way for everything to come. You know, it paved the way for, you know, Miller's Dark Knight Returns, his Year One, you know, and every, you know, like I said, every work since then has revolved around, you know, the creation, you know, kind of the recreation of Batman as the Dark Knight detective as he was kind of originally created as, you know, with, you know, Bob Kane and Bill Finger, or Bill Finger and Bob Kane, whichever way that history wants to put that up, and however you might feel about it. Number 5 on their end, on CBR's end, was my number 2, and that is Brian K. Vaughan, Pia Guerrero, and Jose Marzan's Why the Last Man. It's That's why The Last Man. I mean, it's, you know, it's certainly one of the best, you know, it's one of the best runs ever. For me, my second favorite. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, absolutely 100% compelling, fascinating story, unbelievable characters and characterization, great dialogue, terrific art. I mean, it just, you know, I mean, Brian K. Vaughan, he's a winner, man, and he's got no signs of slowing down because Saga, obviously, awesome, and I think the next issue actually comes out next week, so I really need to I need to jump forward in time 1 week to get Saga because I've been missing it for so long because I think they were really kind of waiting for the returns to come back from the graphic novel sales. I think they wanted people to actually kind of catch up. So people who were buying people who were buying Saga from their LCSs, Amazon, wherever, you know, good on them because obviously, I mean, and you know, and the trade, it's like $9.99 or something like that for, you know, the first 6 issues. I mean, that's dirt fucking cheap for, you know, for one of, you know, probably the best comic book that's going on right now. You know, at least certainly the best new one. So number 4 on my end was Claremont, Byrne, and Austin's X-Men run. Simple enough. I mean, you know, introduction of some new characters, Kitty Pryde, Emma Frost, and, you know, kind of really, you know, bring the Hellfire Club to bear, and, you know, of course, you know, leading out of that came the Dark Phoenix saga. So I mean, you know, it was just, you know, you had some of the most iconic imagery of all of X-Men during that run. You know, the whole you know, Wolverine versus the Hellfire Club. You know, when he's in the sewers, he's looking back up, like, you know, I'm gonna fucking kill him. You know, that kind of thing. And that's, you know, been used since then. You know. And the whole kind of Professor Xavier is a jerk moment, you know, we've seen that time and again. So, I mean, obviously, great stuff, you know. Their number 4, and again, this is more objective, and that's Lee and Kirby's Fantastic Four. I'm not a Fantastic Four fan. I never really have been. I had when Hickman was, started writing FF, and then when that, you know, eventually, you know, Fantastic Four kind of rebooted itself. I need to go back and kind of get the beginnings of his run on Fantastic Four because obviously, you know, he's working with Steve Epting. But yeah, I was just never a huge Fantastic Four guy. I mean, I get, you know, it's the first family of comic books, but I mean, to me, I like the fact that it was a family. For the most part, and there was, you know, kind of like all, you know, this kind of consistent unresolved issues, certainly during the early years, between Reed Richards and Ben Grimm, that they both kind of were in love with the same woman, but one of them was this kind of, you know, grotesque thing, and one of them was a man that could stretch all of his body parts. So who do you think the chick's gonna go for? Hey. You know, of course, you know, if you go onto some of the, like, the comic art websites, I mean, like, not the, you know, like, respectable ones, but, like, the really filthy ones, you know, you get a lot of that, you know, Fantastic Four, you know, Reed Richards, very, very not Comics Code, kind of, private time with Sue. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I get it. So I mean, that, you know, again, that was another evolutionary leap forward, is to actually have a team of heroes that were a family, and, you know, became so close that, you know, even if they weren't related by blood, they were a family. So I get it. You know, again, it's one of those things, but I've just never really been a huge Fantastic Four guy. So, So I can understand in the historical perspective of things why Fantastic Four was so important and why it's so highly regarded, but me personally, not one of those things. So, moving along, number 3 for me was, and this is probably my most controversial one, which is Joss Whedon and John Cassaday's Astonishing X-Men run. I mean, it's just, for a superhero comic, to me, it can't be beat. It has everything I want from superhero comic. It has fantastic action, great character, amazing dialogue, moments of genuine emotion, and you can feel it radiating from the page. When a comic makes you cry, you've stumbled on something special. When it makes you kind of stand up and cheer, you're like, fuck yeah, this comic is really good. And Whedon and Cassaday's Astonishing X-Men stuff absolutely did that. Because, there were some moments in that where it's just like, oh, this is, it's such an awesome moment, like, when in issue 23 of their run, when Cyclops, finally kind of not regains, but kind of, shows his his optic blast power is still there, and it just blasts through the whole fucking planet essentially, and even at that point Wolverine's like, man, you get some mad props for that, Summers, and to me, my X-Men, let's finish this. I mean, that was just like when it was, yeah, so awesome, because Cyclops is the fucking man, and now he's just a douchebag. Thank you, AVX. Anyway, their number 3 was my number 8, which is on more Swamp Thing. I'm not going to really say any more about that, because I think I've said everything I need to. I can see why it's higher on this list than it is on mine, because this is definitely one of those comics that, for many, many people, changed the face of comics forever. I obviously came into it late. If I had been reading it at the time that it was out, instead of me, kind of spending all my time reading, the only comics that I was reading from DC at that time were maybe Batman and Detective Comics and Justice League. Because I remember, flipping through, pages and seeing, well, here's, Swamp Thing winning all of these awards, and, I'm reading, just another kind of meh issue of Batman. That's kind of cool, but, also at the same time, it's, nothing, it's nowhere near as good as what he was doing. So, again, it's one of those kind of experiential things where I think it's people who were of that time and who were reading comics at that time, and even people who have gone back to it, obviously they realize how important it is, but I think it's more of people who are also coming up through that time reading Swamp Thing and reading Alan Moore's work, because this is really the only Alan Moore work really in existence where you can point to, there's more than 12 issues of it, and it's always awesome. However many issues he did, I have 6, volumes of, 6 trades of Swamp Thing on my shelves, all the Alan Moore stuff, and it's all incredible. There isn't like some of the Earth-to-Earth stuff is, in that story arc where it's, Swamp Thing trying to get back to Earth. That stuff falls a little bit flat for me, only because I appreciate, kind of his travels, but some of it's a little too, like the issue that's written almost entirely in prose. It's a little hard to get through, because it's beautiful, and the words themselves are beautiful, but it doesn't give you like the kind of feeling, not necessarily the viscera of his work, because that obviously is present, but it, there's, when it's not dealing with the more kind of, I don't mean to say down to earth, but when it's dealing more at the emotional core of who Swamp Thing is, or who Abby Arcane is, or, then it kind of a little bit loses me. But still, I obviously appreciate how incredible it was and how much it changed things. Okay, so we've discussed what my number 2 and my number 1 are. Why the Last Man and Preacher. We've already seen them on this list here from CBR. So I'll gloss over my compare and contrast, and I'll go to their number 2, which is my number 4, which is Claremont Byrne Austin X-Men. Their number 2. And that's obviously held in extremely high regard, and and not for nothing either. It's an amazing piece of work. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I do wish that they still, that they made more comics like this. But again, it was so kind of revolutionary for its time that, when we see things like this now, I think, in a lot of ways, I think we've become spoiled. I think that a lot of, I think that we see, in general, that a lot of the great comic books have already come and gone. That's not true. There's always going to be something that will come in the future that will be even better. And I think many of these things we look at with more of a nostalgic vibe, and I totally 100% get that. Because it is, some of this stuff, I mean, like, because there are definitely Claremont Byrne issues that are real stinkers. But for the most part, it's pretty amazing stuff. And, I mean, it's hard to beat, John Byrne's art when he was, kind of at his best, But, to me, it was just one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, it's amazing. I totally and 100% understand, but it's, and I think it's great too. I think it's obviously tremendously significant, and I would go back and read it like that. And I'm still missing some of my Essentials books that I had from that era that have all of those stories in there. But I have those DVDs of that have all of the X-Men issues. Those 50 years of I bought so I bought some of those off of eBay. That were kind of specifically from that era. So that I could read. So I could read that stuff again when I wanted to. So that's, it's a treat to go back to, certainly, anytime that I can. But I do like to have it on paper. So anyway, moving to their number 1. This is the one that I'm going to get probably smacked to shit about. Because I've read one issue of this, and that is Neil Gaiman's Sandman. I mean, this is what the winningest, I think it's won the most. It's won more Eisners than any other comic book in existence, or something like that. Some ridiculous amount of Eisners that won, like 15 or something like that over its run, 75 issue run or whatever it was. Here's the thing. I didn't get into it at the time when it was coming out because, again, I was collecting, but I was still collecting a lot of superhero stuff. Wasn't really getting into the Vertigo stuff. The closest that I got to kind of the Vertigo of that era was Grant Morrison's Animal Man, really. And, Sandman to me I wasn't an indie guy. at that point in time. It was very much, I liked the, you know, I liked the bluster of the superhero. I liked the splashy art. I love, you know, it's like I read a lot of, you know, kind of during that time, you know, I was reading a lot of, you know, the McFarlane Spider-Man, and not, okay, I should say the Michelini and McFarlane Spider-Man, not the McFarlane written Spider-Man solo title, which was abysmally awful, because he's not a good writer. But, you know, just, you know, a lot of superhero stuff, not really too much of the independence. I mean, the only reason that I gleaned onto Animal Man at all was because I saw this this issue with him, where it's, you know, the great Brian Bolland cover, or however you pronounce his name, Bolland, whatever, where it's Buddy on the floor with the broken picture of his family, and, you know, just the you know, it's all blue, and then you have these, you know, these kind of bright red, you know, the only color in the whole thing, you know, these pills. You know, you can see, okay, you know, he's in this fetal position, and, you know, you can see, is he going to OD or what? Did he OD? That's what attracted me to that title, because it was like, okay, this is really unusual to see in, you know, a comic, because I was reading Justice League Europe, and he was a part of Justice League Europe, so I'm just like, you know, it's Animal Man. Why would he? What's going on? Why is he so upset? And then I went back and I bought that issue, and then I went back and bought the issue preceding that, and I'm like, okay, well, his whole family has just been murdered. So it's like, okay, that's really fucked up. And then, of course, you know, the whole Deus Ex Machina thing of, you know, Morrison literally coming out and talking to Buddy about his, you know, that his cat had died, and he wanted to kind of, you know, have his readers kind of experience a sense of loss, which is why, you know, he killed his family. And of course, he brings them back at the end and everything like that, and makes everything all good again. But anyway, so Sandman to me was just, it was too indie. It was too, the ideas that it held to me just seemed too highfalutin. I've only ever read the first issue of it. I have, like, the collector's, like, has the little gold, you know, leafing on it, you know, as like the number ones that you should get and stuff like that. And I have that, and, you know, I've read it, and, you know, it's one of those things, like, I don't really get it. And, you know, to see, I mean, so many people, because, you know, it does kind of tally how many number one votes each get, and this had, you know, such an overwhelming amount. And then when I came back to comics later on in my life, and was reading, you know, I was reading a lot of independent stuff, reading a lot of Vertigo, but this was still one that I did not get into, and I will tell you why. Because to me, Sandman meant goth. The whole kind of goth culture had, like, they had adopted, you know, the whole kind of Sandman mythology, and, you know, just really kind of co-opted it for their own use, you know, because you saw, like, the Ankh was everywhere in the goth culture. You know, I have one from when I was kind of doing my goth thing. And thank God I don't do that shit anymore. But, you know, it's like my girlfriend at the time, she loved Sandman. And, you know, it's like I'm trying, you know, it's like, but she had no idea who Peter Parker was. I remember having a big argument about this. One day it was like she felt like I made her feel stupid because she didn't know who Peter Parker was. And in fairness to her, I might have. Because it was like, it was so amazing to me, because I met her when she was working in a fucking comic book store. And I'm like, you know, and she was, you know, she was into me because, you know, it's like I kept coming back week after week, and I was getting, you know, Preacher trades, and, you know, reading, you know, a lot of the, you know, a lot of the other Vertigo titles, and showed that's kind of one of the reasons that we ended up kind of, you know, she kind of ended up asking me out. She asked me out, which was like the coolest thing ever. I have to admit that, to have like this super, super hot chick who worked at a comic book store be into you, you know, because it's one of those things, you know, you always kind of fantasize about, you know, it's like, as a guy, if you walk into a comic book shop and there's this insanely gorgeous girl there, and, you know, you want her to be into you, but, you know, it's like, you're kind of like dork because you know, you read this stuff. But it's like, well, she must read this stuff too. So that's why, you know, I know this is way off topic, but it at the same time, it is very much stuff, because she was very into goth stuff, and you know, she was very independent. She read a lot of, you know, Roman Durgis stuff, you know, a lot of Johnny, a lot of Lenore. You know, she read nothing of the mainstream comics, not one bit. You know, the closest that she got was like Preacher, and, you know, she read, you know, like, you know, she'd read V for Vendetta, and not Watchmen, because that was too superhero-y for her. So, I mean, that to me was just like, it was a representation of that culture that I just didn't want really any part of. And then kind of tried it out a little bit later in life, and still didn't want any part. And then, you know, and that was kind of a phase that passed, thankfully, pretty quickly in my life. I still do have pictures, though. Me with, you know, black fingernail polish, and never wore the black lipstick, though, so don't sweat that. Never had my hair dyed a really weird color. I had it dyed black, and I do like to get it dyed black because I like it when it looks black. And especially because it hides my gray. So, because I'm an old fucking man now. So, yeah, spit at me all you want because I haven't read more than one issue of Sandman. I know I deserve to have, you know, maybe some of my geek cred revoked for that. But, like I said, in all fairness, it's just not a book that really appeals to me. You know, because I started reading Gaiman's American Gods, and I just could not fucking get into that book, man. It really, it's like, it started off, you know, it was really absorbing, and then after a while, it kind of just started wearing off on me, like some kind of weird dream or something like that. Just kind of wore out. And so it's still amongst all of my books. I've never picked it up again. I'm sure I will at some point in the not terribly distant future. Can't guarantee that. But, you know, who knows. So that is it. Not for this video, but for this kind of wrap-up. So, especially, you know, tell me what you think while I'm talking about it. Tell me what you think about where this, you know, your kind of thoughts of this list, you know, and, you know, what you think about me, how I feel about it. If you think that I'm totally wrong on some things, if you think that I'm absolutely right on some things. Always nice to hear that I'm right, but I also do appreciate being called out on when you think I'm wrong, because ultimately it all comes down to opinion. It's art. It's going to be subjective, okay? So, I get it. But I do have something that I do want to show you. I was talking about this, I can't remember when. But I went on eBay and got this sucker. Spider-Man vs. Wolverine by James Owsley and Mark Bright. And yes, this is because when I was talking about Spider-Man and how there was, you know, the only death that Spider-Man has ever been actually directly responsible for, he actually did kill this person, was the death of that book's kind of anti-hero / sort of villain, which is the character of Charlemagne. So I did get that. Even though I have like no money right now, and, you know, I'm one of the reasons that I'm back on the fucking flip phone and not on my smartphone anymore is because I have no money because I've been spending it on a lot of this shit. But this was really cheap. I got this a really good deal on that. So it was one of those things like I needed to have this. Another thing that is kind of fun that I wanted to show you, and I'm sure that I'll be talking about it at one point in time or another. And this is something, I don't know if I told you, I'm pretty sure that I have, that I belong to this service called the Amazon Vine, which is I'm able to select a couple things a month, if I'm able to get them in time, that are things that I will read, watch, use, because it's, you know, appliances and shit like that also, and then I will write a review on them because I write so many fucking reviews for Amazon. So if you ever go to Amazon.com and, you know, you look for James Donnelly, you know, as far as a reviewer, you're going to find me. You're going to find like the, you know, I don't know, it's well into the, you know, it's close to 200 reviews, if not more. I mean, some of them are short, and some of them are like obscenely long. But I got this, which is kind of on a lark, because I just wanted to see how they would illustrate this. It is the Book of Revelation. It is literally a graphic novel transcribing the Revelations of St. John. And it's fucked up. I will say that. It's got some really gorgeous art, though. I will say that. And the artist on this is Chris Coel, who I've never heard of before in my life. But it's, you know, it's adapted by a couple of a couple of priests, I should say, not friars. Friars. But a couple of priests who did this adaptation or translation, I should say. And then you know, this guy named Matt Dorf, who did the adaptation. But these other things I wanted to show you, just back here. I'll be right back. Trust me. Anyway, so I've been digging through kind of the memories of things that I once loved and that I had when I was a kid, and just kind of wanting to revisit some of those past memories. We did talk about this not too long ago, and so what I've been getting lately on eBay as cheaply as I could possibly find them are these old book and record sets from Power Records. And what they are literally are issues of certain comic books. We have this issue of Captain America and the Falcon, and it called "And the Phoenix Shall Arise." Sadly, it does not have. There are no credits as to who wrote or drew each, but it does have, you know, has in the back has the little 45 record. Which you know gives you a little ding to signify when you can turn the page, and you know the voices and the and everything like that are awesome, and they're really goofy and silly. And but like I said, I do actually have this physical issue, and if I could find it, I could tell you exactly who did it. This is another one I had when I was a kid. I had that one when I was a kid. I had this one as a kid. This is Batman. It's called Stacked Cards, and of course it's with the Joker. This one, unfortunately, not in the greatest condition, but you know, because it's definitely really worn. But no idea who. If this was, this looks like Dick Giordano's work, but. You know, it's just, this is a really kind of goofy tale anyway. You know, it has Chief O'Hara and Commissioner Gordon. But it's you know, it's a fun little read. This one I did not have as a child, and glad that I have it now, because it is It's a Wolfman Colon adaptation of the issue Terror in the Snow, in which it's Rachel Van Helsing, of Tomb of Dracula, which is Rachel Van Helsing and Dracula are stuck together in the mountains of Carpathia while Frank Drake is out looking for them. And then this is one that I had when I was a little kid that I loved because the art in here is just fantastic. It's really, really good. And it's a really good, and it's actually really well done, music, sound, so on and so forth, and that is The Monster of Frankenstein. So this is, and it's actually an excellent retelling of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in, 26 pages. So it's obviously hard to get it down to that size, but it really does, it's a really good summation, because there's a lot of the events that happen in Mary Shelley's book are on the page here. So it's actually a really good adaptation. But again, I have no idea who did it. And then there's this one. And this is the one that I got this just yesterday. I listened to it last night, and it is glorious. And it's just simply called House of Terror. This is one I did not own, but it's a full 12-incher, 33 1/3 RPMs, and it's the art in here is very Neil Adams-esque. You can just see certain facial expressions and certain moments that really seem like they're from like the Neil Adams kind of catalog of work here. I don't think that I have no idea who did this again, unfortunately. But this is it was because this book, I remember I used to get this from the library all the time because it was such a fun exploration into literally the House of Terror. It is, because you have a young Vincent von Frankenstein, who is the nephew of Victor, and he is basically invited into they're being chased by wolves. He and his fiancée Erica, and they're being chased by wolves. They're helped by this very wealthy count. And of course, this count kidnaps his fiancée to force him to create a new to create a new creature. And of course, it is revealed that it is indeed Dracula. He wants him to create another creature so that he will have a protector during the day. And in the midst of this, his beloved is actually thrown out of Vincent's beloved is thrown out of a window, a really high up window too, by the Frankenstein monster for apparently no reason, but then is attacked by a werewolf, and so she actually becomes a werewolf. So yeah, it was the whole kind of Dracula, werewolf, Frankenstein, just good music, good narration, good fun. If you've never heard or picked up any of these and you have a record player, I suggest picking one up, because they are, if you don't think that they're fun, at least in some way, then woe to you, because you need a sense of humor. But anyway, I'm so glad that I have these as part of my collection now. There is one more of the full-size ones that I want to get, which is another old Batman one, which has 2 stories in it. One is which he actually is detecting alongside, I don't know if it's someone just pretending to be, or if it actually is Sherlock Holmes. And another story in which he has crash-landed the Bat plane in Gorilla City. So yeah, we get Grodd and all that good stuff there. So that is actually it for this edition, the special edition of the Shadow Gallery. Thanks for watching. If this is your first time here, subscribe, thumb it up, thumb it down. Again, comment, tell me what you think, and you know, let me know. And we may, like I said, may or may not have a new Cats Comics Corner this week. It will really depend upon how we spend our weekend. Or spend, tomorrow night, pretty much you can forget that, because the fall premiere of Burn Notice is going to be on, so that will definitely take up our time. And we have to take our cats to the vet tomorrow. So, I mean, even if we might not even end up watching that tomorrow night, it's just going to be might be kind of a bummer evening, Anyway, again, thanks for watching. Appreciate you coming, hanging out with me for an hour. So catch us next time when we're on. And so this is me, James Donnelly, saying goodnight from the Shadow Gallery, reminding you, as always, to stay in the shadows.